Welcome to Jaw Time with Realtor Jeet this year in 2024. One moment. Oh, there it is. Oh, I had YouTube on in the background. Jaw Time with Realtor Jeet is back this year, 2024. And our first special guest for this year is the one and only Pastor Donn King. Donn King is the Confidence Cultivator. He is a professor of communication studies, which means a professor of standing up in front of people and saying stuff. He is also a pastor, a speaker, a writer, and a communications coach. He works with professionals and leaders who want to discover or remember their unique message and deliver it confidently so that they can increase their impact, gain influence, and build their careers. Thank you for joining us today, this new year, and enjoy some jaw while you're at it and learn about Donn's awesome book, The Way of the 3-Year-Old Why. Live what really matters. Help me welcome Pastor Donn King.
Thank you, Harjeet. It's so good to be here with you, and such an honor as you relaunch Chai Time. I meant to ask you before we got on, how many episodes have you had of this podcast?
Oh, I think I have 50. That's a good
Wow.
question. I have to double check that. But I think
Yeah. Well, that's
I have
impressive. I mean, the average podcast only lasts for 8 episodes.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. I normally do it at the beginning of the year, all the way up until summertime. And then summertime, I enjoy the time with my family and then get back on jaw time and have a nice cup of coffee with my favorite people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or jaw.
Understand that. Yeah. Got to get some here myself.
So jaw or chai means tea in Punjabi or Hindi or in India in a lot of languages.
Mhm.
And it's a pastime as well. And David, Happy New Year to you as well. So we're going to be getting comments as well. So please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe to the channels wherever you're watching it from. So either YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn. And I'm really grateful that Donn is here today because he truly is a confidence cultivator. And I mean, I have his book on the Kindle and I'm reading it. I'm reading it currently. And just with the first sentence, I automatically resonated with the book. And it's just like once I read that first sentence, I was there. I was already invested into the book. And just going into it more, it's like you start feeling the characters and you feel for them, each and every one of them in their respective ways. So, Donn, I guess that'll go to my first question is what inspired you for the 3-year-old why?
Well, and that's a good question. On my own podcast, I really like digging into origin stories. So this speaks to my heart. It actually started as a speech. For a long time, I worked as a speaker. Let's see, what's the short way of doing this? I was building a speaking career when my own disabled daughter came along. She was hospitalized 24 times in her first 4 years of life. And that made me undependable as a speaker. Now, back then, people would contract with you 6 months to a year ahead of time. So it just wasn't fair to my clients for me to maybe have to call up 2 weeks before an engagement and say, I'm sorry, my daughter's in the hospital again. Don't know if she's going to live. I can't make it. So I quit marketing.
Mm.
So I had about a 10-year period there. I started life as a writer for whatever it's worth. And writing has always been a part of my life. But then I hit that 10-year period when, just like Dan Roberts in the book, which, by the way, the book is not an autobiography, but I do draw on a lot of our real life situations as inspiration.
Mm. Okay.
Just like Dan, I had about a 10-year period when I wasn't writing much at all. And I told people I wasn't writing because I was depressed. I see that one of the folks that are on with us here is Jeff West. And so I was having a conversation with Jeff in, I think it was February last year, talking to him about the concept and whether he would want to work together on it. And Jeff said, you just ought to write this book yourself. And I said, I'm not sure that I can. Oh, give it a shot. And I started writing on it, and then it kept coming and kept coming. And as I've shared with Jeff and with Bob Berg, who's been such a great encouragement here, it turned out it wasn't true that I was not writing because I was depressed. I was depressed because I wasn't writing. Now, I don't mean to suggest
Mm,
anybody who's depressed, all they need to do is to write. I
yeah.
think what it means in the bigger picture is that I was denying a part of who I am.
Yeah. Wow.
So, if you get a charge out of solving plumbing problems, that's your creative outlet. You need to honor that. Now, again, that's not going to cure all depression. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, that's where this book came from.
This book came from getting yourself out of that, or being out of depression,
Yeah.
versus you wasn't honoring yourself when you were depressed, because that was your writing. Your creative outlet is writing. And
Hmm.
you just stopped doing what you love doing because it was just you were not in that place, and it was you were fogged up prior.
Exactly. And then the idea of the way of the 3-year-old why then came out of what had been a signature speech. But in that speech, I was just talking about the 5 guidelines, 5 principles for figuring out what matters to you by asking why the way a 3-year-old would ask why.
And
You've
like
how old is your? I can't remember your
my
child.
Amrinder, she is 6.
6. Okay,
Yeah. And
so
you
so
met her
you
when she was 2.
yeah, okay. So you've already gone through the 3-year-old. As a 6-year-old, they're
Hmm.
still pretty persistent in asking why.
Yeah.
They're not going to be satisfied with surface answers.
Nope, she's still not.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the idea of ask the way a 3-year-old would.
Oh, okay. So that's where the title comes from, The Way of the
Exactly.
3-Year-Old Why.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm at chapter 3, so I'm not too much into the book. Right now I'm in like I'm in the character of um Dan, who is like just struggling to balance out his life at this time, with the medical needs he needs to give for his daughter and his wife. And I mean, for me, when I was reading it, why it put me right in there is because, in 2023, as you know, Dawn, I was struggling a little bit with my own mental, um, my own my own physical health. Yeah, mental too, because I was
Yeah.
a bit depressed because of my I knowing that, I got to take care of my body right now,
Yeah.
and I'm putting behind the things that I love doing right now. So looking for that harmony was something that I was actually in search of in 2023, was combining both mental and physical together, and spiritual. Because without those three, and I read it, and Bob Berg, you mentioned Bob Berg, he studies the book, The Science of Getting Rich by Waddle D. Waddles, and I've been reading it, and it talks about how you must align all three parts of that plane, your mental, your physical, and your spiritual, in order to be the productive you that you want to become, or impactful you that you want to become. So
Exactly.
it makes so much sense, and I thank Jeff for inspiring you to do that, because this book is absolutely, it's like what Bob just says, it's a fantastic and amazing read, page turning.
Oh wow! Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that so much. You know what you were just saying, Harjeet, about the rough year that you've come through. I'll recommend for you and for your viewers. There is a great book by Catherine May that's entitled "Wintering."
Wintering.
Wintering. Yeah, and the idea is that we have a tendency to push away those difficult times of life, maybe to pretend that they don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
We make people uncomfortable when they know we're going through one of those difficult times, but it's part of life, and to
Yeah.
honor that and to use it the way that nature uses winter. That is a time of rest and of
Wow.
recovery. Kudos to you because you have done that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I did winter.
Yes.
It was a winter time, and you know what? Winter is beautiful because it does bring out the blossoms of spring when it does come out, and then
Yeah.
summer you get to see those beautiful colors afterwards. And so that is so wintering is by who again?
Catherine May. Catherine is with a K, and
Catherine.
last name is just Nay.
Oh, Catherine Ney. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wintering by Catherine Ney. So if anybody wants to learn more about that, I definitely sure I'm gonna get that. If anything from so Dawn and I met through the Go Giver Success Alliance. And it's a community built by Bob Berg and Kathy Tejanel. And all of us are just so, I love how connected we are when we do get to meet each other and speak with each other one on one as well. And it's a beautiful thing to have such a community that builds through. So if anything, Don or anybody from the Go Giver Success community, Bob Berg, Jeff West, if they recommend something, I definitely for sure I'm out there getting that book and I'm reading it and I'm taking what I know that I needed to hear and I'll put it into action. So if you're reading, if you're listening to this podcast and you're looking for something, you were meant to hear that. Get the book and read it. See what you needed out of that. I'm sure there's golden nuggets for you out there who needed to read something like that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and you said this is the origin, the origins of your book, Dawn, and we've had amazing conversations before jaw time as well. Um, what your speaking engagements and your communications cultivator, how do you help people cultivate their confidence and communication skills?
Well, there's two primary ways over the years. My day job is as a as you mentioned in the introduction, college professor, and so I'll tell you a story of one of my that exemplifies where I get some of my greatest satisfaction. This is, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago now because it was pre-pandemic. But I had a student who came up to me on the first day of class, and she said, "You know, I'm not just scared. Everybody's taking a public speaking class, which is what I teach. They're nervous, but said I have clinical anxiety. I'm under treatment for this. I take medication." I think she was angling to somehow get excused from the class, which at my college it is a required class, and I've worked with students like that before, and I said, okay, before we try anything else, let's just see if we can't help you to not just get rid of this, but to harness it. Because we were looking at our coffee mugs a little earlier. I've got one that says it's not fear, it's energy. Okay. And so let's see if we can't find a way to, as Microsoft would say, it's not a bug, it's a feature.
It's not
And
fierce energy.
long story short, she not only stuck with the class and finished it, she was an outstanding speaker. After the class was over, she got a job that required public speaking and has gone on to have a career involving that. Now, it's not just that I helped her to turn into a speaker, rather, I get great satisfaction out of her having found within herself the skill that she didn't even know that she had a talent for, and to be able to harness that. That's very satisfying to me. And so I've done that same thing with individuals that I've coached, with seminars that I've conducted. Helping people not just to be stereotypical speakers, but to find their own way of bringing a message out in such a way that it impacts an audience. And I think that makes the world a better place. I get more satisfaction out of that, honestly, than doing my own speaking.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love how you mentioned the harnessing of that energy within them. And it's already there, and you help bring it to light.
Yes.
And that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful.
I kind of relate now. I hadn't thought about this, but I relate to in the way of the 3-Year-Old Why. There's a character who is a coffee barista, and at
Hmm.
some point she says something along these lines that she's not the creative person herself. She's more of a midwife. And we kind of joke a little bit about, the barista is sort of like a bartender for sober people.
Hmm. Yeah.
you know,
That's true. Like the bartender's talking to you, and you're expressing they're listening, and the barista's listening
yeah.
while you're drinking coffee, and you're sober.
And not all baristas are like that, of course, but then not all
Yeah.
bartenders are like that. But
No. But it's nice to see, especially when you're watching it in the
yeah,
movies.
yeah.
um so that that brings me, you reminded me of a public speaking class of my own when I was in college. And there was this student who stood behind, so we all had to go up and speak for about 2 minutes. It was just 2 minutes we got. And I love how you mentioned it's not fair, it's energy, because I guess at that time, being the person watching this happen, it was like, wow, can somebody really be that scared of standing in front of people
Oh yeah.
and talking? But he and this student, he would sit in the back and he would talk like all throughout the entire time in the classroom. He would always be the first one to say something, very opinionated, and would speak out loud while he was sitting in the chair in the back.
Hmm.
But when it came time to stand in front of the classroom and speak, he fainted.
Oh my.
He actually fainted. And like we all got up from our chairs and was like, okay, hurry up and call the security. We brought somebody to bring him water. We helped him when nobody moved him, because he actually fell
Hmm.
and fainted from it. So what makes people do that? Like, how can you sit behind a chair and you're talking in front of the same people, but to come in front, what shifts? What's the energy shift
Okay.
from that?
Two things that come to mind with this. One, going back to an old dead Greek guy named Epictetus. He was a Stoic philosopher, and he said something like, he said it in Greek, which I can't say it that way, but loose translation, he said it's not what happens to you, but what you think about what happens to you that determines your
Mm,
experience. So I had a similar student one time, and the way that we helped her to get over that very thing was
mm-hmm,
I haven't done this very often, but with her, this was the approach that was needed. We started her speech by me and her just sitting in a chair facing each other at the beginning of the class and just letting her talk with me. And then as
mm-hmm,
we continued to talk, I said, stand up, but just keep talking to me, and then slowly we moved to the front of the room and said, okay, now keep talking. I'm going to just sit down here, but you can keep talking to me. And so those slow shifts
mm-hmm.
enabled her to realize gut level. I mean, she had the intellectual understanding, but to realize
Yeah.
gut level, it's not what happens to you, but what you think about what happens to you that determines your experience. Another aspect, and I don't mean to be critical of
Mm-hmm.
your teacher at the time, but I can't imagine doing a class where I had the students only speak for 2 minutes
Yeah.
because, and we've got some experienced speakers who are making comments over here. I'm sure you can verify this. It's harder to give a 5-minute speech than it is to give a 20-minute speech. And
Yeah.
2 minutes is not enough time for you to be able to settle in and find your
Yeah.
groove.
Yep. I totally agree with that because I myself, when if I am given 30 seconds or 1 minute or two, even 5 minutes, like I do talk a lot sometimes and I can ramble and then I need to catch my thought and then go through it. It's also helped me catch my thoughts more and condense it so I could be more clearer, which is also a good thing, I guess. But as a student and a learner, and you're sitting in a small class, it's absolutely you're right. It's just sometimes we need to find that groove,
Mhm.
and for somebody who's new and standing up speaking, finding that groove could be like you've got to prep yourself. Like right before here, before we got on here, I was jumping up and down and prepping my brain.
Yeah, it's energy.
And I know,
It's energy. You don't want to
it's
get rid of it. You just want to harness it. The bumper sticker
yeah.
way to say it is we don't want to get rid of the butterflies. We just want to teach them to fly in formation.
Wow, that's beautiful. I got a quote. I have to write that down as a quote.
It's
So,
not
can you
original to
say it
me,
again?
but I can't remember who said it first, but it's a good quote. And it helps before. Well, here I am bumbling around. When you're speaking and under the influence of adrenaline, you can't think reasonably. So you really do need those
Mm,
bumper sticker reminders. Yeah, and so if you can have a little short phrase like "It's not fear, it's energy," which means we don't want
yeah.
to get rid of it. We're not trying to get rid of the butterflies, trying to teach them to fly in formation. Those little short bumper sticker phrases can help to remind you that there really would be something wrong with you if you could stand up in front of a group of people and not feel that.
Yeah,
It would mean
that's true.
that you don't care about your topic, or you don't care about your audience, or perhaps most dangerously, you don't care about yourself.
Yeah.
And so I was joking earlier, but this is not a joke at this point. It's Microsoft. It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah.
Make use of it.
It's a I love Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, so much for quoting um, Don. We don't want to get rid of the butterflies. We just want to make sure they're flying in formation.
There you go.
And that's it brings me to the next thing is that's what really brings ourselves out authentically and connects us to the audience. And that's what you're doing when you're teaching and forming this thought process for your students and for your clients that you coach is building that energy to form their thoughts and give their messages.
Absolutely. In fact, here's a related thing that what you just said helped me to remember. Most people, when they get ready to stand up in front of a group like that, and I would assume this applied to the student from your class, they don't think I'm going to give a speech. They think it's a speech. They think
Mm,
something formal. They've got a preconceived notion about what it is. It's sort of like a couple of friends that I had in graduate school who had lived together for, I think it was like 7 years without benefit of marriage. Uh, no judgment here, okay, but they just
mhm,
lived together. They told me later they weren't sure how do you refer to each other. Boyfriend, girlfriend didn't seem right. Partner seemed too clinical. Anyway, at some point they got married in because of insurance and that sort of thing. Soon as they got married, they started fighting, and they were divorced within 2 years.
wow.
Later, I talked with them about what happened, and they said they thought they just had a lot of baggage around the term marriage, husband, wife. They had expectations that were not examined. It's not what happens to you, it's what you think about what happens to you that determines your experience. So if you're thinking speech, then you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and you're also probably not being as effective with the audience. So don't think of it as a speech, think of it as a planned conversation. Now, I do emphasize planned because we're not talking about just rambling around up there.
Yeah.
But one of my mantras is connection before content. It doesn't mean the content doesn't matter. It means without the connection, the content won't matter. This is not just a cheap, easy way for you to get information across. If it's just about the information, send a memo, send an email. It's about the connection first. Does that make
That's
sense?
amazing. That makes absolute sense. It's like you are connecting with your audience, yet you've planned your content
Mm-hmm.
so that you can effectively give that message that you want to give across to begin with.
Yeah, because they're not going to remember the details anyway. As Maya Angelou famously said, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't quote it exactly. People won't remember what you told them, but they will remember how you made them feel.
I love that
Yeah.
quote. I absolutely love that quote because it's so true. And when you think back to things, you think of the feeling you've had. And I talk to a lot of people throughout the day, and Bob says it all the time as well, and so many other go givers, that when we are out, it, what we're doing is we're impacting other people. And the most important thing in our day is how did how did our connection with that person, and of course I'm putting this in my own words, how did that connection with that person, how did you impact their life? How did you make them feel? Did you make them feel any better? Was their life any better because you said hi to them today, even if it was just a simple hi? That actually reminds me of something that my brother did a few years ago when he was speaking to somebody at a Panera Bread. He was just talking to somebody behind a line. And this person was so depressed that he actually he expressed to my brother that he wanted to um, commit suicide, and he felt like his life was nowhere. And my brother spoke to him, and he recommended him to read The Go Giver. My brother introduced me to the book The Go Giver, written by John David Mann and Bob Burke. And this is a book that had profoundly impacted his life, and he shares it. He goes, read it, meet me in a couple of days, and let's talk.
Wow.
And he did. He met him in a couple of days, and they were, he said, this really opened my mind, and he hasn't seen him since. Then he went a year later. He was at Panera Bread, and he saw him, and he didn't recognize him at all. And the kid comes up to him and he taps on my brother and he says thank you to him.
Wow.
He was like, thank you. I got a job and I'm working and I can pay my bills a year later. And that's the impact you can put on somebody's life just by saying hi to them.
Absolutely.
And that's that connection you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of again our mutual friend Jeff West. He talks about fusion points
Mm-hmm.
in the context of
Yeah.
sales. And of course, we're not talking about sales in terms of manipulation. We're talking about sales
Yeah.
in terms of serving
Giving.
people.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have both the emotion and the logic for people to act. But that because the emphasis seems to be on sharing information and talking, and then that's why I put more emphasis on the listening and the emotion. But it's not that that's more important. It's that without that, the logic will make no impact. That I'm just amazed at what, as Bob is saying, amazing story of your brother, a wonderful sharing of that. You never know. This is what this makes me think of, Harjeet. Robert Schuller once said, anybody can count the seeds in an apple, but only God can count the apples in a seed. You never
Yeah.
know the seeds that you plant, where they're going to come up and benefit somebody.
Yeah, every time I think of that, it does. It's like it was just he was supposed to be there at that time. And then just a year later, I guess it was a message given to him that, look, you did something for someone. He didn't get anything out of it
Hmm.
except that he saved a life.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's huge.
Yep. And that's the biggest reward I think that any person could give, is knowing that you had that impact on somebody's life. And I truly believe you've given me it, just in a little bit of time that we've spoken, so much inspiration and so much life, with even with our breakout sessions that we have on our Wednesday calls with Bob Bergen and the rest of the Go Givers. Even when we're in those little rooms together talking, like, you've given me so much inspiration on my experiences when I was telling you about it. And that's the connection. Like, if I can remember a conversation, and I forget a lot of things.
Don't we all? Oh, well. Just wait. It doesn't get any better when you get older, but yeah, yeah.
And if I can remember one, I know it was impactful, and there was a connection there, and I meant to remember it because it's there, and that seed that you spoke about, Don, is there, and it's just it's getting watered. Let's just say that.
And it's usually more of a feeling than just a bit of information, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
it's more of a feeling. It definitely is more of a feeling. And I think, and Jeff says, laugh out loud. It does get more interesting as we age.
Interesting is a great word there, Jeff. Yes.
And Bob wrote, "What an amazing story that is. Thank you for sharing that, and please thank your amazing brother for me." I will, Bob. I'll definitely thank him. It's so crazy how that story came in my head today.
Perfect
And
timing.
David says, yep. And David says, small acts of kindness can have a profound effect. It's the love behind the kindness that makes it so impactful. And that is so true. So I would love to encourage everyone to get this book, The Way of the 3-Year-Old Why. Read it, devour it, and really tap into that inner 3-year-old of yourself. And then also that other book, Wintering, that Don mentioned, because it's, if he's mentioned it, there's a reason for it, for you to read it, and for that message to come into your ears.
Absolutely.
And then I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I always give the honor, and it would be a privilege, Don, if you would do the closing and your one message to the audience today.
Oh, wow. That's a great closing question. I think the message would be most people tend to go to one extreme or the other. They're either Dunning Kruger effect, which gets a little psychologically technical. These are people who think they are much better than they are. But for most of us, we deal with imposter syndrome. We are always comparing our insides to everyone else's outsides.
Mm,
And so, what I want to encourage people to do is to give yourself a break, spend some time in quiet, think about the way of the 3-year-old why. This is not just pushing the book. I mean, thinking about
mhm,
what really matters to you, what makes your heart sing.
mm.
We'll throw another term in here, Harjeet. Ikigai, Ikigai. You haven't gotten there yet in the book, but it talks about that in there. Comes from the concept of the blue zones. Loosely translated, Ikigai means what's your reason for living, your reason for getting up in the morning. Honor that. And by doing so, you will not only care for yourself more, but you will contribute to the world more.
Oh, that's beautiful. You're not only going to care for yourself more, you're going to, oh my God, I'm so sorry, Don.
That's
You're
okay.
going
I
to
think I said contribute to the world, but there's lots of other verbs that can come
contribute
in
to
there.
the
Yeah.
world. Yeah,
Like impact the world for
contribute to the
better.
world.
Yeah.
That no, that was just perfect. Contribute to the world more, because that's, That's what it's really about. What are we here for? What are we contributing when during our time in this world? So that was just a perfect word. And thank you so much, Dawn, for joining us today, for doing the first Shot Time Live for 2024 this year. It's just been an honor and a privilege for you to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an
And
honor to me.
my pleasure. And with that, I'm going to say, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to any of the channels that you're on right now. And also go follow Don on his websites as well. Don, you want to share your websites?
Sure. And I don't think I can type it in here, but I can say it pretty easily.
I'll put it in the comment.
DonnKing.com. That's DonnKing.com. And then for the book, DonnKing.com/3 and the lowercase letters YO. So
Don.
Harjeet has typed it into the comments over here. Those comments, some of them will not show up on LinkedIn, but we can always put those in there a little bit later.
Yep, I will. I have to change one of them because it did an automatic correction.
Yeah.
Correction.
Yeah, I run into that. Yeah. I get called Donna, Yeah. If my parents had only
Gustavo
known.
says he's Gustavo says he's watching in Venice, Florida.
Yeah, yeah.
Venice, Florida.
Gustavo's a
Thank,
former student of mine. Good to see you, Gustavo. He's,
oh, that's
as he
awesome.
says, he's from
He's
Brazil, but he came to this country, works in communication. So Gustavo's a great communicator. Good to see you again.
oh, that's amazing. I'm so happy that we get to connect everyone here together. And Jeff, yes, autocorrect is my lead.
Oh. Sometimes,
Yes, Jeff.
sometimes I'm amazed at what my phone thinks I'm trying to say.
It gets my own name wrong. I don't know how it does that.
Yeah.
But thank you again for joining. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Peg, for correcting that on there because my autocorrect said something else. And you all have a wonderful day.